welcome back to another episode of Happiness Matters, the show with me, Beanie Man, and Mo the Service Dog. And hello, we have a repeat offender. Mike Anderson is back. He just couldn't wait to come back on the show, which that makes my heart sing. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
I was like, this was the first time somebody wanted to actually come back to the show.
I'm glad to be back. Honestly,
I'm excited to have you back because I just love you because you're amazing, and I love your energy and your heart and just
Thank you.
So, and we were like, so what are we talking about this time? And we're gonna talk about military life.
Yep.
Because you've been we lovingly refer to military brat.
Yes.
Which is not easy. Military life in itself is not easy. It's not for the faint of heart.
At all.
And I didn't know what I was getting into when I met my husband and he married me. I'm like, oh yeah, I had no clue. So
it's different. I mean, so the last time I was on here, I talked more about DJing and about like my fight with bulimia, and we talked about the military lifestyle a couple times, and then it was like, that door was opened and I just wanted to go more into it. So pretty much, being a military kid, and obviously every situation is different, but for a lot of situations it's the same because it is the military after all. But my personal case was, I was the son of a officer in the Air Force, and we moved pretty much every 2 years. From the day I was born, pretty much, we moved every 2 years. So
and moving is stressful for anybody. And I mean, and we're fortunate in the military. We get the movers come to the house, they pack us up and all of that. But it's still very stressful. And I can't even, I mean, we have 2 kids too. And I cannot even fathom what it must have been for. I mean, we were fortunate.
Oh, yeah.
We stayed like 10 years in one place and 3 years in another, but the 3 years we were in one, they were really little, so they were okay. And then we were fortunate to be 10 years in the same place, so they had the same, somewhat the same friends because military school, so they move and stuff. But yeah, for kids it's tough because especially for officers. I mean, for us enlisted, we get to stay a little longer in places. But I saw all of our officer families. I mean, they move every 2 to 3 years.
Yep. It took so long for me to understand that too. This past weekend, I went on a road trip with my mom to Glenwood Springs, and we were talking about when we lived at the Air Force Academy here in Colorado. And I see the general idea was that you live somewhere for 2 years, you would move during the summer, so it didn't upset school or anything like that.
In a perfect world.
In a perfect world, and apparently, and I didn't know this when I would have been 4 or 5 years old. We moved at Christmas. It sucked. I remember saying goodbye to one of my best friends, Steven, and it was, we were just walking home from school on the academy, and I was like, I love you, buddy. I'm going to miss you. And he's like, why are you crying? And I'm like, because I'm leaving. And he's like, you're going to be back, aren't you? And I'm like, I don't think so. And then that was it. I didn't get to say, really, that was like my goodbye, and he didn't even know why I was like upset. And then we moved, and don't get me wrong, I mean, moving every 2 years, it was an exciting adventure because you were always going somewhere new. The road trips every summer were fantastic going across the country. I can't say that for my parents, but for me as a kid, that was wonderful.
And all I could think is, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?
And, it was funny. We had an old school Oldsmobile station wagon, and nowadays kids don't know what it was like. But back in our day, you remember those station wagons? They had that seat in the back, so everybody else would be facing forward. No, because I
grew up in Germany.
Oh, they didn't have those?
No.
Oh, okay. Well,
Germany had little cars because Germany is a little country.
Well, yeah, but you also created so much cool stuff. I mean, the Autobahn, the German breakfast.
God, I miss the Autobahn. Oh my God, do I miss the Autobahn? I was just talking with a friend. Anyway.
Yeah, no worries. But quick side note. When we lived in Stuttgart, I went to a gas house, and that breakfast that they serve with the rolls and the meat and the cheese, I was like, every morning. Yes, it was incredible. I miss those because it's just it doesn't compare to Americans. I mean, let me rewind. the American way of breakfast doesn't compare to the German way of breakfast.
No,
it's just theirs.
But it's different cultures and different everything, so.
That is true. That's a whole nother show.
I know, yes. Customs around the world. Oh,
yeah,
that's a good one.
That would be a great one.
That would be a fun one.
Oh my gosh. The Adventures in Germany, that thing could just fill up a whole 45-minute show on its own. But yeah, it was just, it was just really, it was an exciting time, but it was such heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. It was so heartbreaking because most people, as an average example, your average American who has lived in, like, let's say Oklahoma, Nebraska, Kansas, even parts of Colorado, definitely Montana. There are people there, like when I went to high school in Montana, there were people who had known their best friends since they were like 2 years old. Like they lived in the same houses next to each other, they went to the same preschool, the same kindergarten, the same elementary school, middle school, high school. I have no idea what that feels like. Like, it is heartbreaking because, you'd live in a place for 2 years, and just when you were trying to get that, when you were finally establishing your friends, finally getting to know people, you got yanked.
Yep.
And when I moved to Montana, I'd meet people, and and it was hard meeting people in that world as well because, yeah, you meet friendly people, but you mostly stuck to the other military kids because
I was an outsider.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. You had the built-in clique. They knew what it was like to get uprooted however so often. The other people didn't understand that. As far as they were concerned, we were outsiders, just dropping in. And
because you're not staying, so there's no point in building that relationship because you're going to be leaving anyway.
Exactly. And I will say that there are a lot of exceptions to that rule. Like some of my best friends I met in Montana, and I'm still friends with them to this day, and I'm so proud of that. But it's hard. Mm-hmm. People don't know what they're signing up for. And, you have the spouse's perspective on things. What was that like?
That's a whole nother ballgame. Well, I mean, and as the spouse, we're always the buffer between the service member and the kids. And there were many times where I felt I just wanted to, like, what, y'all figure it out. I'm going to lock you in a room, y'all deck it out, I'm gone. But being a mom, and I love my kids and I love my husband, it's like I wanted to keep the peace because it's also my own sanity. But it was really tearing me apart, and it took its toll as well. And it's just tough. And then when you have the deployments, or even just the field problem, but I mean especially deployments, is like you're mom and dad at the same time. So you play that double role. You take care of the kids, and you also worry about your spouse who's deployed. It's like, are they coming home? How are they coming home? What's going to be their mental state? And all of that. And it's like, especially when your service member has a leadership role, it's like for my husband, he couldn't leave work at the door. Work came home with him. And for him to decompress, he was watching TV. And it's like the relationship between him and the kids suffered. And I've seen that with a lot of families. I've seen that with a lot of families, and it's like, and it's left to the spouse that's staying home, mm-hmm. The mom, the non-service member spouse, I should say, that has to find that balance in between while dealing with all our own stuff. It's like, who are we? It's like, oh, well, I'm so-and-so's wife or husband, I'm mom to so-and-so, and FRG, the family readiness group people, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So there's really nothing left for us. We can't build a career because of the moving.
Yep.
And which makes it really tough. And it's like, who am I? What do I want to do? So we volunteer a lot, which is great on a resume, sort of. It doesn't hurt.
Right.
But still, it's like we cannot build a career on top of all this other stuff. And it was tough. It's tough. And it's like, and not everybody's cut out for that. I've seen so many of our friends split up because it was too tough. It was too much. I get upset when people blame it on the military and on deployment. Well, it's because of deployment we got divorced. No, that's not it. You were having problems before. You just didn't want to deal with it, and you're still not dealing with it. You're just blaming something, because we just celebrated 30 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I met him, when did I meet him? He was a cute little E4 when I met him. He was adorable. Oh, he still is. Yeah. So he was a cute little E4 specialist. Got promoted to corporal right after we got together, and then he got promoted, up the ranks. And I've been with him since then throughout the rest of his career with the military. And he retired as a command sergeant major. It's like he can afford me. It was so funny when we pinned him in El Paso at the Sergeant Major's Academy, because everybody there gets pinned. And I pin him, and I'm walking back up the stairs in the auditorium, and everybody's like, "Hey, congratulations! This is me." Cha-ching!
Money, money.
And Jeffy was so funny. He goes, "Oh, you just married me for my money." I said, "No, honey. Back when, I married you for love. I'm staying with you for the money." I earned that. He's like, "Well, that's just wrong," and I'm like, "Yeah, but that's part of reality." But he's amazing. He's amazing, and now that he's out of the military, and he took like almost 2 years sabbatical, like really just decompressing, and he's the guy again that I fell in love with. It's amazing.
Wow.
But while we were in, it was tough, on us as a family with the kids. Because again, you have to be mom and dad. And here's a fun fact, and all my military spouses will totally understand that. Doesn't matter if it's a field problem, if it's a deployment, whatever. As soon as your service member goes, everything is fine for a little bit, and then all hell breaks loose. Cars break, appliances break, this, and bam! And shortly before they come back, everything is fine again. Seriously, because we don't have enough to deal with while they're not there. It's like, oh, here you go. See how strong you really are. You're like, I feel like the tea bag. And there's this thing with military spouses, we're like tea bags.
Mm-hmm.
The longer we're sitting in hot water, the stronger we get.
That is very true.
Well, screw that.
Well, and it's crazy the amount of, by the way, just so you know, this is not negative on the military. We're just stating the facts of the matter. Both single spouses and family spouses, they deal with so much, because the family spouses, they're dealing with taking care of the kids, being mom and dad at the same time. And in some cases, back in our generation, it was wait until your father gets home. So then the mom has to take over that role where it's like, he's not coming through the door or she's not coming through the door. So I'm going to have to regulate this myself. Mm-hmm. And, God bless my mom, she was dealing with 3 kids, a dog, and it was just unbelievable. And, I have had a lot of friends who are single spouses, and that's even harder because, unless you have that support group with the FRG, and even then, sometimes those FRGs aren't necessarily the best place to be.
No.
Like, you got those people that, and I'm not putting anybody down, just stating the facts. Sometimes they make those decisions that are not necessarily the best for their relationships. And, it's everybody has that military experience when they have to make that choice. It's like, it's hard. And
it is. And, because I was abused as a child, and I always swore I will not lay a hand on my kids. I will not even spank them, because I was always afraid that, because I know I have that anger in me, I was always afraid that once I start, I can't stop. Because I had all my own stuff to deal with too. So I got creative, because I also don't do empty threats.
Nice.
So I always had to come up with stuff that I was willing to follow through. My kids can tell you stories, and maybe one day I'll have them on the show.
That'd be awesome.
But one of the things I did is I introduced my kids to the concept of an orphanage. So we were living on the 4th floor, no elevator, because Germans don't do elevators, And I was severely overweight. I was in a lot of physical pain. And husband was not home. Yeah, I think it was an extended field problem or school, or something. He wasn't there. And it was right before Christmas. And I was in pain, physical pain and everything, So I was miserable. And I know it's that cycle, because kids are like animals, man. They pick up on your energy.
Yes,
and
they do.
It's just a vicious cycle. And it was right before Christmas, and I was like, if I threaten them, if you don't stop, then Santa won't come. Well, that's not fair to the kids, because I knew I couldn't stop. So it wasn't fair to at least I had the smarts to think of that. But I didn't want to threaten them, then Santa's not coming, because that's just not right. So it's like, what can I do? It's like, oh, boys, come, let's watch a movie. So we watched Annie.
Oh, Lordy. That's a, oh.
It's a great movie. I
is.
love the movie. So we watched Annie, and because we're in Germany, there's a lot of red brick buildings with bars on the first floor windows, and we lived in Ida Oberstein at the time, and between Ida Oberstein and Baumholle, the main post, there was this nice road, and there happened to be this brick building with a driveway and bars on their windows. And my kids were smart. They're like, well, if it was in Germany, there is no orphanage. And I'm like, and we were thank you, universe. We just drove by the building. I said, you see that building over there? They're like, uh-huh. I said, that's the orphanage. They're like, oh. So, and then one day, it got so bad, my older son, he was just pushing and pushing, and I'm like, you know what, I'm done. I started packing his stuff in a suitcase.
That's awesome.
He came coming bringing toys. And I'm like, what are you bringing toys for? He's like, the orphanage? I'm like, there are no toys in the orphanage, remember? It's a hard knock life. And he's like, So I pull out the toys. And he goes like, I'm sorry, Mama, I don't want to go to the orphanage. I'm like, okay, are we good then? Can we both agree that maybe we should listen to what Mom says the first time and not try to push it 20, 50 times because I don't play that game? Uh-huh. So I left that suitcase standing at the door for about a week.
Wow.
It worked. And then I remember one time they were, and I don't do noise, I'm gonna leave it, in enclosed spaces. And we had a minivan, because good American family, we had a minivan. And Tim I think was in the very back, and Patrick was in the seat behind me. And they were at it in the car. I don't even remember what they were. I mean, it was like, guys, you need to stop it. And they just totally ignored what I said and kept on going. And I said, you know what, if you guys don't stop it, I'm going to drop you off at the orphanage right now. Because they're my kids. Well, we don't have any of our stuff with us, so no, you can't. And I'm like, you know what, watch me. I'm going to drop your happy butts off right now, and then I'll bring your stuff later. Yeah, right.
Uh-oh.
Did I mention the universe is amazing? We were just coming up on the orphanage. The orphanage. I pulled in the driveway.
That is genius.
Silence. And they're like, oh crap. She means business. She's for real. They're like, no, Mom, I'm sorry, we're good. We'll be quiet now, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right. Remember, I'm not playing. That worked. And it was so funny because, and I know some of you are saying too, oh my gosh, that's so awful. That's just horrible. How can you do that? But others also said, wow, that's awesome. And I was seeing a psychiatrist at the time. And I shared that with her. And this is for all you naysayers out there. She looked at me and she goes, wow, that's genius. And I'm like, well, thank you. I was like, I'm a genius, And here's what she said. Because in a very non-threatening way, I showed them there's places worse than what they thought they had.
That is true.
And it worked. I kid you not, that orphanage thing worked for years. It worked for years. So.
That's beautiful. I love it.
But here's the thing. It's like, when you're that single parent, mm-hmm. and it doesn't matter if it's military or not, but if you have to do both, we break too. I mean, we're humans, and it's like, plus, especially if we're dealing with all our own insecurities, our own feelings of shortcomings, our own demons. Now you have all of that on top of it. That's not healthy. That's not, and I can see why there are so many kids are being abused, because people just break. And it's like, and I talk about that cup when you fill it with water to the brim and then you put like one drop of red wine, now it overflows. It had nothing to do with the red wine, but it had everything to do with what's already in the cup. And it just overflows. It's the same with us. But again, because I have been abused, I always came up with fun stuff.
But that's good though. I mean, from a military kid to a military spouse, mm-hmm. Thank you all for holding it down. Because
thank you.
I guarantee you, and I mean this from the nicest place in my heart, you guys in a lot of the situations I've seen, and I can only talk from my own experience here as well, we as kids never saw all the stuff that you guys had to deal with. Like, we just saw okay, it's time to move now, we're going to pack up the boxes, or, hey, let's go to dinner.
Well, because we're the parent. You know, we tried, I mean, for me as a mom, I'm a mama bear. I remember one day my kids came up and was like, would you kill for us? I said, in a heartbeat. But let me find out, you're the one that screwed up. Run. And they're like, okay.
Yep.
You know, but I mean, it's our job to protect you because, I mean, it is tough as it is anyway. You know, and it's like, well, it's just our job. I don't know how else to put it. I was just like, it's what we do.
Well, and, you know, another part of the military family experience is, and not to use that same word, you experience things differently.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when 9/11 happened, you know, living in Great Falls, Montana at the time, Malmstrom Air Force Base, it was a different feeling because, yes, it happened to all of America, but as a military kid, you know, it's like civilian kids, they were like, okay, this sucks, you know, but we're going home to our families, you know, it's just, for us, I specifically remember over the school announcement PA, they were like, if you live on Malmstrom Air Force Base and you do not have your ID card, you are not going home. And it was like, wait, what? Because they had locked down the base. Mm-hmm. Everything was on, it was like, I'm not sure what they call them nowadays, but back then it was like ThreatCon Delta. And that was like, the base was completely locked down. Everybody had body armor, helmets. You couldn't be walking outside between certain times. If they
I remember in Germany, we had troops on the roof of the commissary because the commissary was outside of it. Well, it wasn't 9/11. It was when Desert Storm. I remember Desert Storm. I mean, we had troops on the top of the roof of the commissary, because it was outside base and everything. I mean, it's scary. But here's the thing too. So that's on the kids' side. For us, what happened was, I was driving, actually, we were moving from Baumholler to Bamberg at the time, and Jeff was already in Bamberg getting the apartment ready for us, and the kids and I were driving, and I had the news on, and I heard that. My first thought was, oh crap, he's going to deploy, and this time he's not coming home. And then I was like, what do I do? So that 2.5 hour drive on the Autobahn, I miss it.
Are you sure it was 2.5 hours, or was it actually an hour and a half and you just called it that?
2.5 hours.
Speed
but
limits.
I mean, but those are the thoughts that are going through my head. It's like, oh man, now my kids are gonna potentially grow up without their dad. Because I mean, we've made it through Desert Storm. We didn't have kids during Desert Storm. You know, then we made it to the whole Kosovo thing, and we had kids at that time. And, you know, and then the whole Iraq thing, when that started, I mean, the whole, this is like, oh my gosh. And there's so much that's going through the head at one time, because it's not just, I'm not ever worried about me.
Right.
Okay. My thing is like, oh crap. My husband is going to go to war. He may not ever come home, and if he comes home, who knows how, in what mental state or physical state or whatever state, you know. And then I was worried about my kids. How are we going to deal with the kids? And I remember in one of the deployments, yes, he has a Purple Heart, except he refers to it as the I forgot to duck award.
Jeff, you're awesome. And if you're watching this, seriously, that's awesome.
He refers to it as I forgot the duck award. What happened was, him and one of his soldiers were running inside the base when an RPG came in, and shrapnel everywhere. He jumped on top of his soldier, and I remember he called me that night, and it was a stateside number. We were in Germany. It was a stateside number. I didn't recognize the number, and I answered, and I'm like, hello, this is Beanie. Well, Sabina at that time. And he goes, hey, this is your husband. I said, hello, husband. How are you? I didn't connect the dots at that time. It was just odd, because when he's deployed or in the field, we always called Sunday morning, our time. Wherever we were, or he was, Sunday morning, our time, because that was the time the kids were home for sure. I was home. We had time to talk, and none of that, you know, whenever, because then you're a slave to the phone, and I've seen too many. It's like, no, Sunday morning, once a week, because then we get another week down, something to look forward to. Anyway, so that was in the middle of the week at night. So I was like, are you okay? He goes, no, this is my official phone call. I'm like, huh? It still didn't sink in, because he was joking, and I was talking to him. I said, what do you mean your official phone call? He goes, yeah, I've been hit. What? He's like, yeah, I've been hit. I said, what do you mean you've been hit? And he told me, it's like him and his soldier were running and RPG came in and he got hit. And I'm like, so when you say you got hit, how bad is it? He goes, well, it's not as bad, so I can make the phone call. What happened was this, and he still has the you know, the reflective vest they have?
Yeah.
With some of the metal melted into it.
Oh, wow.
And when you look at him, he has a scar, I forget which side it is, but if it would have been a millimeter deeper, it would have been his main artery. He got a piece of shrapnel in there. And now it's funny because when we both go through the airports, he sets it off because he's got all the shrapnel in him. You know, I set it off because of all the metal in my body from all the surgeries, you know. But, and every once in a while, it's like you see a piece moving, and because they couldn't remove it, because it was just so much. And they're like, it just has to move out. So he has pieces. Every so often you see a piece coming up to the top of the skin. We're like, oh, look, there comes another one. Of course, I'm thinking, what if one of those pieces goes into his heart, into his lungs, into one of the vital organs? That is my concern. But it's like, I'm not focusing on that, you know, but getting that phone call, and even when I hung up, and I have to tell you, you military kids,
Yeah.
I love you because my kids were my strength a lot of times. So, and it was like 9 o'clock that night when he had called, and the kids were about to go to sleep, and I called them into my room. And I told him, I said, I have some good news and some bad news. They're like, okay, what's the bad news? I said, Dad's been hit. And I could see them. I said, but the good news is, he's okay. He's okay. I mean, it's not life-threatening. You know, he got very, very lucky. He got very, very lucky. And, you know, and that was okay. And then we cried together. And always, the other thing, too, that I always did with my kids, you know, and you being a military kid, and, you know, I was always very honest with my kids. I made it age appropriate, but when I was sad and I was crying and I was scared, I cried in front of my kids and with my kids. Because we had the opportunity to lean on each other. I did not always put on the strong face for my kids and pretend everything was hunky-dory. Because I know, as the kids, they have their fears, they have their worries. You know, they're not just worried about their dad, they're also worried about mom. I know my kids were. You know, so for me to be honest with them and showing my vulnerability and me being scared, you know, it really helped all of us get through that. I know you weren't there at that time. We had Caruso at the time, baby.
Yeah.
But I mean, I drew strength from that because of my kids. I made it another day. Because of my kids, I was able to continue on. But it still hadn't sunk in that Jeff was hit.
How long did it take?
It took, because we were stationed overseas in Germany, and because I was one of the senior spouses, I was also one of the translators for our German spouses. Because every time something happened, we send out a memo. It went out, I mean, after the next of kin all have been notified, then we send out the memo to the company that was affected, and then it went out to the rest of the battalion. That's when it hit me when I translated that paper.
Wow.
When I put his name on that, because unfortunately I had to do a bunch of them. But when I put my husband's name on that paper, that's when I really broke down. That's when reality hit me. Seeing his name black and white on that official piece of paper. And I called my girlfriend, who was our FRG, FRSA at the time. And I called her, and I'm sobbing. She goes, "You just put his name on the paper, right?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Same thing happened to me because her husband is the one my husband jumped on top of."
Wow.
Yeah. I'm getting chills, but I mean, that's when it really hit me, you know, and everybody deals with it different. It's like, I remember we had a spouse, and her husband was severely injured. He actually flew him back to Landstuhl, and her behavior was just so odd. She did not want to go to Landstuhl. She was like so detached, and I didn't know. I was like, what the frick is wrong with you, you know? Now I understand everybody grieves differently. Everybody deals with stress and stuff like this differently. I mean, we're good friends, you know, but I was like, at first I didn't get it until something happened to my husband. That's when I'm like, oh wow, You know, we all deal differently, and it's like, who are we to judge? You know, and my husband, I mean, in one of the attacks, that he actually lost one of his soldiers. You know, and military life sucks. I mean, it's awesome. It is awesome, but it also sucks like a super Hoover at times.
It is. It's one
tough.
of the, I would say, it's probably one of the greatest double-edged swords in the history of mankind. Because you get to go travel around the world, you get to see all these
and you
amazing
have friends
things.
everywhere now.
You have friends everywhere. You have, you go to places that most people will never ever see in their lives. As far as like parts of Germany, you know, my brother went to Guam. He got to go do all this cool stuff. My sister, she was a cadet at the academy, and she got to do all this other cool stuff. And for all the amazing things that you get to see, do, meet, everything, it is so much heartache, so much stress, so much, and
it's stress. It's really, it's like 24/7 stress. It really is, because even when they're home, you could always get that phone call. Be ready to go in like 24 hours or 48 hours or however, you know, whatever's going on in the world, wherever you're stationed at and everything, you know, and they have to be ready within X amount of time. And every time the phone rings, you're like...
Because you never know.
You never know.
And, you know, it's...
Or when they're deployed, too. You know, every time the phone rings, it's like... I mean, before I got the phone call, it was like, yay, you know, daddy's calling, husband's calling, yay, I'm so happy. But then after that phone call, every time I got a stateside number outside of our regular Sunday morning number, my heart sank. And time stood still for a second.
And, you know, and the positive aspect of that, though, albeit for all the negatives, is military kiddos, they have such resiliency.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Like when I used to work on Fort Carson with kids, you know, child and youth services, and I got to see the kids from like 0 all the way up to like 16, and they're resilient. It's, you know, there's so many times when kiddos are like, I'm missing my dad or I'm missing my mom, and, you know, you sit down and you take time to talk to them, and then they like 10 seconds later they'd be like, all right, let's go do this, you know, and they go play. And
but they just need somebody to heal them, because and that's the thing, is like, we're so quick to dismiss the feelings of kids, and it doesn't matter if they're military or not. We're so quick to dismiss it. We blame it on hormones, we blame it on this, you know. It's like, oh, you'll be fine, blah 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 blah. Guys, do me a favor, do not, when a kid comes to you to talk to you, do not dismiss them. Listen to them. Sometimes it's just they need to be heard. They need to know that I matter, I'm valued, you know, and my feelings are real. It's not my imagination, da da da. Listen to them, you know. And sometimes it's just, you don't have to say anything. Just listen to them, give them a hug, and let them know you're there. It is huge.
And that carries over to adulthood too.
Everybody,
like,
yes.
Literally, like, there's been times when, you know, when I've been with my fiance Beth, where, you know, I'm sitting there and she's just like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I don't know. And that's because with my background, it was like, oh, there's something wrong. Block. And then at some point, whether it's like a song comes on or some other story, it's like the walls come down, and then it's just that, it's that. And, you know, that's not just military, that's universal in general.
Right.
But it's so much more prevalent in the military group, because kids have to understand. And I mean, as I said, I was born and raised Air Force, and luckily I was blessed because my dad didn't get deployed until probably later in my life. But, you know, it's hard because they deal with death and that uncertainty all the time. I mean, you know, I saw a statistic the other day. Literally, there are people retiring right now who started at the beginning of the war on terrorism in 2001. So their children are going to be fighting in that war that they retired from. And it's scary sometimes.
It is very scary.
Because that's generations going, and at the same time, I have so much love and respect and admiration, because I was a military kid, and unfortunately I tried to do my thing in the Navy. It didn't really work out. That's a whole different story. But, you know, it's the military child and the military spouse just as much as the military member should be loved and appreciated for that. And they do have a month of the military child. I forgot. I think it's April.
March, April, something
March,
like
April.
that.
And they actually like recognize the military child and the spouses for everything that they do. And like, to all the military children and all the spouses, watching this video, we love you guys.
It's like,
Like, seriously. And all the service
Yes.
members, we love you guys too.
Very much so.
And, you know, we have so much love and respect for you guys because
Yes,
a lot of people never know what it's like.
No.
It's hard, you know. And also as a kid, you know, I remember talking to one of my friends. His dad was Special Forces. And he was like, I didn't know if my dad was coming back most of the time.
Well, here's the thing,
like,
and with Special Forces and all of the Black Ops people,
Yeah.
you know, you don't even know where they're going.
Yep.
You don't know where they are. You don't know when they're coming home.
Yep.
If they're coming home, you know, we always assume they are coming home,
Well, yeah.
but they cannot ever tell you anything. And even when they're coming back, they can't tell you where they've been.
Yep.
You know, and that I don't know if I could do that.
It's hard. I
It
mean,
is.
like my friend, he was just like, I remember one time, and he was probably about 13, 14 at the time. He says, outside playing baseball with my dad, and next thing I know, my mom comes out and goes, hey, you got a phone call. And then next thing I know, my dad left 30 minutes later, and I didn't see him for almost a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, how did you deal with that? And he goes, how could you deal with that? Like, literally, I just went...
One day at a time. One day. But I mean, it's also what we're used to.
True.
You know, and it's like, as military families, it's just our way of life. It's like, don't get me wrong, I love the civilian side now.
Oh, yeah.
I really love it, but it's like, I love the military side of it because of the connections we've made, because of the experiences we gained, you know, and we have grown from it so much. We have grown, Jeff and I have grown closer. I mean, there was times where I'm like, I'm out, can't deal with this anymore. But I mean, that's relationships. You work through it. And it is just, I wouldn't miss it. I wouldn't want to miss it. The nice thing is like when I travel and I need to go somewhere, you know, I'm like, hey, who of my friends is there? Can I borrow a couch? You know, I mean, that's really the upside. You know, I mean, it's just fun. I mean, looking back, would I change anything? No. No. Because it is who we are now, and it was a stepping stone for all of us, for the kids, for my husband, for me, you know, for you, for all of us. And it's just like, the only thing I ask for you non-military folks out there, you know, say a little extra prayer if praying is your thing, or send some good vibes to our military and their families. And the focus is on, this is one of my pet peeves as a military spouse. And I love that the focus is on our veterans and our service members, but they come with a whole team.
Yes, they do.
They come with a family. And so many times, you know, and I get frustrated when I go places and there's like, and this is what we do for our military and our veterans and our service members. And I'm like, what about the spouses?
Yep.
And generally what I get is spouses are welcome to come, which is great. Don't get me wrong. I'm grateful for that. But our needs are different than the needs of the service member. Some of it is the same, but so much is different.
It is.
You know, and I just really wish that more people would not just and again, I don't want to take away from my soldier because wow, but there's a spouse behind that service member. There's kids behind that service member, you know, and even though they're not on the front lines, in a way they are. You know, and it's like, show them some respect, show them some love, include them, you know, and find out it's like, hey, I understand you're a spouse of a service member or you're a child of a service member. How can we help you? What are your specific needs? Because this is what we're doing for this, my shy dog. This is what we're doing for our service member, you know, what can we do for you?
Get down, Papa.
On top of that. So, that is my wish, that more organizations and more people would recognize, like automatically, the people behind the service member.
Right, and you know, and they do have those gold star families.
Right.
Unfortunately, and you know, I'm completely 100% on board with you because I mean, it is a lot of the time they don't look at the behind the soldier. It's always and the family is just as important.
Well, we refer to ourselves as the silent ranks.
Yep.
So, and it's just, you know, I love this, you know, the saying, behind every great man is a great woman.
Yes.
I changed that because I can. Behind every great man is a greater woman.
good statement.
especially for the military. So, but anyway.
Yeah, but
Yep.
just know.
But we love our military.
Yes, we do. We love the military, and just understand that, you know, it's a package deal.
It is.
You got the service member, you got the spouse, and you
It
got the
is,
children.
and then you have the dogs. Yes, you have the dogs and
Yes.
the cats. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, quarantine for a month. Ooh.
Oy, oy, oy. Yeah, we never had that. But
Oh, you guys are
anyway,
lucky.
so anyway, thank you, Mike, for
Thank
being
you.
here, for sharing your military experience as a military child.
Thank you.
It's fun for me because I'm the mom, you know.
Yeah.
So hopefully, eventually, my kids will be on and share their side too.
Well, thank you
So.
for everything that you did to support the family,
Oh,
to hold it
thank you.
down, to support your husband,
Thank you.
and everything that you had to take on, because you know y'all don't get enough credit.
I am woman, hear me roar. Thank you. I appreciate you. I love you.
Love you too.
So, thank you guys for watching. As always, be happy, be kind, be loved. Till next time. Bye.